สวัสดีผู้เข้าร่วมอบรม Special InCites Training for MUIR Staff ทุกท่านนะคะ and good morning Dr. Julin. Hi. So
Good morning.
good morning. So on behalf of Mahidon University, we would like to welcome you all to Special InCites Training for session 2. So I think now this is the good time for starting the training. So I would like to invite Dr. Julin from Clarivate to give us the training for today. So Dr. Lin, please.
Okay, thank you. Very good morning, everyone. Sawadika. So I hope that I think many of you would have attended last week's session. For those of you who were not able to attend last week, I hope you had a chance to perhaps review the recording session. Yeah. So before I start today's webinar session, I wanted to just find out whether any of you had any questions pertaining to last week's content. Okay, you can put in the questions into the chat box and I can address that as we review what we covered last week before I go into the use cases. I've received some feedback that perhaps last week I was going a little bit fast for some of the navigation and features. So for this week, I will be repeating some parts so that it becomes a bit more clearer for the audience. Okay. So let me just share my screen first. In the meantime, I encourage you to put in any questions into the chat box, yeah? Okay, Ms. Kanita, can you confirm that you can see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for today's agenda, what I will be covering is a recap of what we covered last week. So I'll be revisiting the 5-10 benchmarking framework that I introduced last week. At the same time, I will also try and explain some of these indicators again so that it becomes clearer for all of you. Once we have done the recap, we will go into the sample use cases for InCites. So how you can use InCites data to address some of these questions that I have. One thing to take note of is that InCites use cases is limitless. So there are many ways of using the data. It all depends on what is the question or analysis that you require. Okay, so these are just 5 that I have shortlisted for today's walkthrough. So the first one would be how you can benchmark Mahidon against other institutions in a specific research area. So let's say, for example, Mahidon University, you might think that you are the leader in, say, dengue research or malaria research. Then how are you compared to the other institutions around the world that is doing malaria research? Then we also go into identifying potential collaborators in the event that Mahidon University wants to find strong collaborators for phytochemical research. How do you use InCites to find that answer? We will also go into things like funding. So if within Thailand itself, you have funders within Thailand, but you can also explore funders outside of Thailand. So by using InCites data, you can have a glimpse to see which other funders outside of Thailand is providing grants or funding to Thai researchers. And we will also look at journals that publish in a particular research topic, because I understand that many researchers always have the question of where should I publish for my manuscript. Then we also finally look at the open access papers. Okay? So open access publications require the university or even the researcher to pay for the article processing charges. And sometimes these fees can be very high. So by doing this analysis, it would help you to see whether these publications have given you enough citation impact or research impact to be able to say, hey, I've made a good investment in these open access papers. And finally, even though Mahidon University currently does not have access to Web of Science, I wanted to also show you some of the custom data analysis that you can do when you have Web of Science at the same time as InCites. Okay, I already saw one question from Miss Kanita. So it's about grouping. Yes, definitely. So I'll definitely be able to show you the grouping functionality, which has just been released probably last month. So I will definitely go through that later on. Okay. All right, so let's do our recap first. Okay, last week, I've actually shared this profiling framework with all of you. It's called the 510 profiling framework. And it is a framework that you should be using when you want to benchmark or compare either a university or even researchers against each other or research units against each other. Okay. So this framework comprises of two parts. The first part is your research output, and the indicators that would help you to reflect your research output would be productivity indicators like the Web of Science documents. So how many documents have you published in Web of Science? And then also the percentage of documents in the journal impact factored journals. In terms of quality, the indicator that you can use would be the percentage of documents in quartile 1 journals. And this is quartile 1 within Web of Science. Okay, so these are quartile 1 journals within Web of Science. Then you also have the collaboration indicators, and this could include industry collaborations, international collaborations, or even our new indicators, which is the domestic collaborations and institution-only collaborations. The second part is on the research outcome. So you have that research output indicators. What is the outcome of that research? Has that provided you with good research impact? So research impact can, the indicator that you should be using is the category normalized citation impact, CNCI. I will be referring to this fairly frequently through today's walkthrough. So I would want to explain a little bit about this one. So category normalized citation impact, CNCI, is a way to calculate the citation impact based on a specific category, document type, and publication year. So it has already been normalized. What is normalization? It means that it has already taken into account all these different factors like the document type, publication year, subject category, so that you can compare across different disciplines. Okay? So the CNCI value of 1 will always be the global benchmark. The global benchmark is 1.0 CNCI. If any entity has a CNCI that is above 1, then that entity is performing above global average in terms of research impact. If the entity has a CNCI of below 1.0, then that entity is performing below global average in terms of research impact. Okay, so anything above 1, good. Anything below 1, not great. Okay, so something that you need to be always aware of. Then for research performance, we have these indicators, which is the percentage of documents in top 10%, top 1%. These are indicators taking into account the citation performance of the published documents. So based on the citation counts in that particular field, these set of documents are performing in the top 10% of their field. And correspondingly, these are documents in the top 1% of their field based on citations. Then you also have the hot papers. These are papers published in the more recent years, more recent 2 years. And these are papers that have citation counts that put them in the top 0.1% of their field. So all in all, these are the indicators that you would be able to use if you want to benchmark different entities against each other. So let's now refamiliarize ourselves with the InCites platform and show you a little bit about the different navigation options on the platform. So to access InCites, you will need to register for your own ID and password, even though it is activated on site on Mahidon University already. Okay. What you need to do is you need to either use the on-campus access to go to insights.clarivate.com or even the off-campus access to go to insights.clarivate.com. Once you're on this platform, there will be a registration option and you can just register for your ID and password. Once you have your ID and password, you will then be able to commence utilization of InCites platform. So in some of the navigation features I wanted to cover was on the analysis part. So let's go to Analyze. If you want to look at an organization, so if you want to pull out Mahidon University's data, what you need to do is go to Organizations. Okay. If you have previously used InCites, and you can see that there are some filters here already applied, if you want to just clear everything and start from scratch, start from square one, just click on Clear All Filters. Okay, clear all filters right here. And this would be the default time period and the default schema that will be on this analysis. So to retrieve Mahidon University data, one option is to type in Mahidon University in the search box right there, and you will be able to retrieve Mahidon University. If you want to retrieve a set of organizations from a particular country, you will then use the filters that are available here on the left-hand column. On the left-hand column, there are various filters that you can apply to this analysis, depending on what you want to look for. So if the question that you want answered is to have a list of organizations from Thailand, then the location filter will be the filter that you will use. So you can click on location and choose Thailand. Okay. And click on update results. Once you are here, you can see now there are 112 organizations that are from Thailand that are available to view on InCites platform. The next thing that you might want to filter, if you want to benchmark just your academic organizations, then there is an organization type filter here that you can apply. So you can put in academic and update. So from the 112 organizations earlier, it is now 88 organizations because we have already limited this to academic accounts from Thailand. Okay, so you have pulled out the list of organizations that you want to look at. The next thing is to apply the indicators. So indicators can be applied in two ways. The first way is through this tab here. You see indicators. These are all the available indicators on InCites. If you're not too familiar with all the indicators yet, you can either make use of the 510 framework that I have explained earlier on, or you can actually click onto each of these indicators and there will be a short explanation. Okay. If this is the one that you want to include, then you click Add. All right. So you can select perhaps documents in Q1, and click on Add. So once you have done that, it will be added to the back of this existing table. Okay. And it will be ready for you to utilize. Once you are familiar with adding these indicators using this column, then there is a quicker way to add indicators or remove indicators. So there is this plus icon here where my cursor is. So you can just click on Add Indicator, and you can deselect those that you do not require and include those that you would want to have. And then you click Apply. So once you do that, you've removed certain indicators and you've also added some new ones. Okay. One of the newer features that we have is called the grouping functionality. So the group functionality can be applied onto each of this analysis that you have. So for example, here you have researchers, organizations, locations, research areas, and so on. The grouping can be done for each of these analysis. So say, for example, you might want to group a few universities together. You can select the three and create a group. Okay. And name it Thai Uni Group 1. And then you create group. Okay. So now you have Thai Uni Group 1. Then perhaps you want to add an additional group, perhaps from a different country. Then what you can do is remove this filter. Okay. Remove the Thailand filter. And select the institutions that you want to benchmark against for Thailand, for example. So maybe I will put in a location filter for ASEAN so that I can find the ASEAN organizations. So perhaps I want to include NTU, which others could we put in? Let's put in Thong Duk Thang, okay? Just examples. Then you can create a group and put in ASEAN Uni Group 1 and create. So now you see that there are two groups right here. Okay, so let me unselect this first. Okay, so now you have the two university groups, and you can now see that the indicators have already been aggregated based on the institutions that you have included into each of the groups. Okay, and now you can easily compare between the two by going to the visual. Okay. You would be able to use the scatter plot, sorry. So for the scatter plot, so repeat, the visualization you can use to compare is the scatter plot. And if you select the top two, which is the two groups that you have, then you can see ASEAN Uni Group 1 versus Thai Uni Group 1. Okay, so this is just an example of how you can use the groupings to do a comparison. This same feature can be applied to researchers as well, and I will cover that shortly. So this example helps you to familiarize with some of the navigation features that we have, which is to apply filters and include indicators. There is a third tab here, which is the baselines. So if you click on baselines, there is an opportunity for you to include global baseline. meaning this is helping you to benchmark against the world. Okay, so you can see now that the CNCI is very close to 1.0, and you will be able to see the corresponding indicators for the global benchmark. So for the ASEAN University and Thailand University groups, you can now compare how well you're doing against the global indicator. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the other analysis, which is for the researchers. So let's go to researchers. Under the researchers analysis, again, if there's already an existing filter, just clear all filters first. For researchers analysis, I would always recommend that you use the Web of Science author record as your ID group type, because if you choose name, the chances are there could be a lot of repeat names because some researchers might have written their published names differently on different papers. So when that happens, there could be a lot of duplication of that same author's documents. So for WAS author record, this is an algorithm that we use to group author publications together based on their specialization as well as affiliations. So this becomes a cleaner set of data for researchers. So always try and use the WAS author record as the identifier. Once you have chosen this, the next thing is to then use the filter on the left to filter this down to perhaps Mahidon University. So the filter that you will be using is affiliated organizations. So if you click on affiliated organization, here you put in Mahidon University and update results. And when you're here, you would see that these are all of Mahidon University's researchers, and you can now start to use the group functionality to perhaps group them into specific project groups. So I'm just going to use a few as an example. 1, 2, 3, and create group and put in Mahidon RG1 and create the group. Okay. And then for the next group, I will select another set of researchers. Create group, Mahidon RG2. Okay. So now I have the two groups available here on the top of my table. You can compare the research groups within Mahidon University, or you can also compare the groups across other universities if you are aware of other research groups doing the same research as these researchers. So I've already included some pre-populated groups, and what you can do if you want to compare with other groups is to set those groups up separately and remember to remove the filter for that specific affiliated organization that you have. So here I have Mahidon University. I will remove this first, and it will show you the other groups that I have created. So I have a research group from Flinders University, QUT, all right here. So immediately you can now compare between all the different research groups here by going to the visual. And making sure that you selected the 6. Okay, you set the corresponding indicators that you want to compare them against. So my suggestion is always Web of Science documents, CNCI, and something to do with performance. So perhaps documents in top 1%. And immediately you can see how each research group is doing in comparison to each other. Okay, so Ms. Kanita, I hope this walkthrough for this use case has helped you and also helped to answer that question that you have. Okay, if you want to identify, yeah, Ms. Kanita, yes.
So it is the new function that I try to use it, but in the past I cannot make it. So it is very important for I think for IR, because we need to find the info about researcher and benchmarking also. Thank you very much.
No problem. The other filter that I did not mention was like the research area filter. So say, for example, if you want to identify researchers in a particular research area, then you apply the filter for the research area here. Okay, so you select research area and you choose citation topics. So citation topics is always my recommended go-to for the schema to use. Then you can make use of things like meso or micro level will be good. Okay, so meso, this is an example. Let me try infectious. Maybe? No. Okay, that would be under micro. Hang on. So under micro, you can find a malaria. Okay, so malaria and update results. Then the list of researchers here, which is international, will reflect those that have worked on the malaria papers. Okay. The other filter that you can also consider using is the author position. So I know that for Mahidon University, you probably lead in a lot of these malaria research. So perhaps you also want to benchmark against the other researchers around the world that are leading their research. So this can be done by filtering the author position. So you can use this author position to filter to first author and corresponding author and update. Okay, and once that is done, then you will be able to narrow it down to only those researchers that are first authors or corresponding authors of those papers. Okay. All right, so this is our, I hope this walkthrough has helped you to refamiliarize yourself with the InCites platform. So to take you through the rest of today's session, I have some use cases that I wanted to go through. So the first use case is about benchmarking Mahidon against other institutions in a specific research area. Okay, so to do this, in this slide deck, I have incorporated some screen captures. So these screen captures will help you to understand what are the filters that I have applied and how you can replicate the use case that I have just showed you, right? So let's go to InCites again. So we are going to benchmark Mahidon University. So let's go back to Analyze Organizations. Okay. Or if you're starting from the home page, click on Analyze Organizations. Right. So once you're here on this list, then let's clear all filters first. And let's find Mahidon University. So we have Mahidon. So you search for Mahidon University. So Mahidon University will be here. And you can select So put a tick next to Mahidon University and pin to the top. Okay, so this functionality called pin to the top allows you to make sure that you will not miss out on what you were previously looking at. So that means Mahidon University. So once you have pinned Mahidon University to the top, then you can just remove this filter. So you can see Mahidon University will stay here at the top of the table. Now, the next thing that you would need to do is look at the publication date. So for benchmarking, you might also want to consider adjusting publication time frame. So the publication time frame can be adjusted here under publication date. By default, it's always the last 5 complete years. There is all years, so based on all data within InCites, it goes all the way back to 1980. If you want to set a specific year, okay, you can go to custom year range and you can set the time frame accordingly. Okay. So I'm going to leave this as the last 5 complete years by default. Then the next filter that you would be using is the research area. So under research area filter, you either use the Web of Science schema, citation topics, SDG, depending on what analysis that you want to do. So for today, I will just go to citation topics and look for micro level. So say, for example, malaria again. So let's look for malaria and update results. And this would be all the institutions around the world that is doing malaria research. If you want to go one step further by limiting this to only the academic organization, then click on organization type and use academic and update. So now these are all the academic institutions. Again, repeating what I said earlier on about author position, you can now start to add filters like author positions here and put in first author or corresponding author from each organization and update. Then this would be how Mahidon compares to the others in this list. So each of the indicators here on the table can have a sort functionality. So if you want to see Mahidon University's rank based on number of Web of Science documents, then you will sort the list based on Web of Science documents. So you just click on this and it will sort accordingly. So Mahidon University is ranked number 3 globally for academic institutions between 2017 to 2021 that publish papers about malaria. Okay. And if you want to see which, based on CNCI, how is Mahidon University doing, then one thing you need to do is to apply a threshold first. Because if you see here, let me just try and sort this out for you. If you sort this by CNCI, you can see that there are some institutions that become number 1. Why? Because they produce one paper that produce a huge citation. So CNCI tends to be, you have to use CNCI by considering the volume of publications. Okay, so I would always advise you to set a minimum number of documents per institution. So to do this, on the left hand, there is a filter called Web of Science Documents. This is where you can start to apply a threshold. So you might only want to consider organizations that have a minimum of, say, 50 or 80 publications, depending on the subject category. Okay, or let's try 100. Okay, and update. Then this becomes a list of 17 organizations that produce more than 100 publications on malaria. And once you do that and you sort this list by CNCI, you can now see that for Mahidon University, you are ranked number 5 out of these 17 organizations globally that is doing malaria research. Okay. So this is for this particular use case on benchmarking Mahidon University against another, the rest of the universities on a specific subject category or research area. I am going to pause here just to make sure and see whether there are any questions from the audience. Okay, please don't be shy. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. You can type in Thai, although I can't read Thai, but I think my colleague Tom would be able to either translate it for me, or I can try and or Miss Kanita will be able to translate the question. Okay, so feel free to type your questions in either Thai or even English, and we can address those. Okay. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a few more seconds just to make sure that you have time to type any question that you have pertaining to this use case that I have shown you, benchmarking Mahidon against other institutions in a specific research area. Okay, seems like there's no questions, then we just move on. The second use case that I have would be to identify potential global collaborators in a specific research area or topic. Okay? Specifically for this example, I'll be using phytochemicals as an example. And I will be guiding you through how you can identify the top countries that are producing research on phytochemicals and top collaborating institutions, and also researchers and journals to publish in for that specific research area. So the first thing is on top countries. So what are the filters that I will be using, and which is the analysis to go to? It will be the locations analysis. Okay, so let me just go to the platform. So again, let's go to analyze locations. Now we are looking at countries. First, you will need to clear your filters if there was previous filters included. Then the next thing you would want to do is to apply a filter here for research area. So on the left, there is a filter for research area. Select Citation Topics. Go to Meso. So phytochemicals is a Meso level topic. And let's choose phytochemicals. And update. Okay. Remember to include the various indicators that you want to use to compare. So remember the 5-10 framework again. Remember to include the relevant indicators here. So once you have done this, the next thing you would then do is either you add additional filters where you want to put in things like author position. So that means the lead author is from that particular country. That is something that you might want to consider doing. If not, we can just proceed with this set of results. So from here, you can go into visualization, choose the scatter plot for easy comparison across multiple indicators. Just remember, the visualization will only show you the top 15 of the table. Okay, so if there are specific countries that you want to compare, I will always recommend you to use the pin functionality to pin the 15 to the top of the list. So let's say you might want to compare Italy, South Korea, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and so on. You pin them to the top so that they are able to be included in the visualization. Okay? Otherwise, the visualization will always take the top 15 of this list. So if you sort this by Web of Science documents, it will take the top 15. If you sort this by CNCI, it will then take the top 15 based on CNCI. So under visual, you can use these two as your main indicators, which is one for productivity, one for impact, which is CNCI. And for the point radius, which is the size of the bubble, you can either choose to see percentage of international collaborations or percentage of documents in the top 1%, or percentage where they are corresponding authored. Okay, so depending on what indicator that you have included, the visualization will change. Okay, so take for example here, if I use the point radius as corresponding author, you would see that China has very high. So they are very good in this research, meaning they have above 1 CNCI, high productivity, and majority of their authors are their corresponding authors. So they kind of lead the research, or they own that research. But if you look at the indicator for international collaborations, China becomes the smallest circle. Okay? And the reason is because they only have 16% of their papers with an international collaborator. So this gives you a way to question, is it because China is not so open to international collaboration? Because if that is so, then perhaps they might not be the right partners. Okay, so even though they seem good on paper, like their research impact is great, but if they're really not open to international collaboration, then it might be tough to approach them to be your collaborator. Okay? Whereas for countries like US or even Saudi Arabia, Italy, these are additional options that you might want to consider. So even though they might have lesser number of papers compared to China or even India, but their performance is still above global average, and they have bigger percentages for international collaboration. Okay. So this would be the country level data. The next thing that you can do is say, for example, if you want to approach, you might want to shortlist, say, Italy as your collaborating country. Then which of the organizations within Italy can you choose from? You can click on this 5331. Okay. And there will be this thing called refocus to view, where you will be able to drill down into the organizations. So there is a drop-down list where you can see organizations associated with this entity, meaning organizations that are associated with Italy. Then select this and click on Go. Then immediately, InCites will take you to the analysis for organizations with the same filters that you have applied when you were doing the country analysis. And from here, you can sort this by Web of Science documents, and you can see the top organizations in Italy that publish phytochemical research. If you want to limit this to organization type, then again, you can apply the filter for academic and update. And this would be potential options to choose from. And again, you can use the same visualization here to take a look at the top 15 or top 10 institutions from Italy and see how is their performance. Okay. Then the next thing is to go into each institution. So if you want to approach somebody from University of Naples, then again, you click on this 483 and you refocus to look for researchers affiliated with University of Naples Federico II. And click Go. Okay, then this would be all the researchers from this particular institution that publish phytochemical research. Okay, if you want to change this to the WAS author record, you can change that, and this becomes the cleaner list that you can look at. Okay, so this is this workflow that I've just shown you starts from the locations. So meaning you start from the countries that are doing phytochemical research and you drill down to a specific country's organizations and then look at that particular organization's researchers. Okay. The other way that you can do this analysis is to either look at number one, the top 10 countries, or immediately top 10 global institutes, meaning you do not need to filter this down to a country. So you can immediately go to the organization's analysis and filter down to phytochemicals and academic organizations, and it will list down all the academic institutions around the world that does phytochemical research. Or you can also go to top researchers, meaning this will not be filtered based on country. It will also not be filtered based on institutions. So you just purely look at the WAS researchers and the WAS author record and put a filter to the research area for phytochemicals. Then the additional filter you might want to consider is things like the author position that you want to include. Now, for the researchers, when you're analyzing whether a researcher is a suitable candidate for collaborations or even for talent acquisition, okay, a few factors you might want to consider. Okay, these two indicators can be quite useful on top of things like the H index. So the H index is a good indicator, but it tends not to be able to tell you how well that researcher is actually performing in more recent years. Okay, so the average percentile, which is this indicator that I have included, this will show you on average for this researcher, Ferreira, his papers published between 2017 to 2021 has put him in the average percentile of 77%. So meaning he is one of the top 30% in terms of performance for that research. Okay. So this average percentile gives you an idea of whether that researcher is performing well in his papers. Then the CNCI will also be another indicator to show you how well he's performing based on the benchmark of CNCI 1. So he's performing 2.27 times higher and better than the others in this field. Okay. If you had access to Web of Science, you will be able to see this author record. So if this was the author that you wanted to consider, the author will have a Web of Science author record shown here. It will include all his author metrics like the author impact beam plot. So this makes use of that average percentile that I showed you in the previous screen to plot a graph to show you his average performance. Okay. So the higher, the better. Then you will also see a full list of his publications. So in the previous analysis, if you saw in the previous 2 slides, we filtered this down to phytochemical papers, which means to say it is a proportion of that researcher's full list of publications. So you would probably have to do some investigation of Sherlock Holmes to see whether out of that number of papers, what is the percentage of proportion that is out of all his publications. So by looking at this full list of his 1001 publications, you can then ascertain to see whether he is truly a researcher in the field of phytochemicals. Okay. Then the next use case I will share with you is identifying journals. So in the event that you want to identify journals to publish in, for researchers, you can actually go to Analyze Publication Sources. Okay. So under Analyze Publication Sources, let's clear all the filters. Okay. And you will filter this to by research area. Okay. So the schema that you can use will be the same schema, which is the citation topics and meso, and include phytochemical and update results. Okay. So under this filter here, you can now see the list of journals that publish specifically papers about phytochemicals. And you can include the indicators for the journals like the journal citation indicator, journal impact factor, and the journal impact factor quartile. So you can immediately see their corresponding GIF and quartiles. You will also be able to have a glimpse into the papers that they publish. So under, say, natural product research, then you click on the list. And this would be the papers that they publish related to phytochemicals. Okay. If you want to export, so any data that you have here can be exported. So you can, there's an export functionality here, which click on the down arrow, and you can download this list of 6,000 publications. Okay, I'm going to pause here again. Let me see if there's any questions. Seems like a very quiet group today. Okay, I encourage you to ask as many questions as you want, or perhaps you were following me along today's session. Okay, but if there's anything that's unclear, I encourage you to clarify now. Otherwise, you would have to drop me a separate email after the session. Okay, let me just go back to my slides. Now, the third use case is about funding. Okay, many of the researchers think that I'm only confined to my local funders. Okay, and for them, it's quite difficult to identify potentially external funders that they might want to reach out to. Okay, so within InCites, you can use the funding agency's analysis to give you a glimpse on who is funding Thailand researchers. Okay, so the filters that we will be using would be the funding agencies as well as the country of the funders and the researchers. So let's go to my platform. Okay, so this use case is specifically to funding agencies. So you can go to funding agencies right here. I've already applied some filters, but I'll just take you through step by step. So let me clear this. So for funding agencies, we have incorporated additional indicators where available from funding agencies, meaning if you choose funding agency as your data source, you will be able to see grant award amounts if the funding agency had provided those data to us. Okay, so you can see the number of grants they had awarded, the total grant amount, as well as the currency of that corresponding funding agency. In terms of the output type, you can either choose funded only or funded or published. Okay, so I will include both funded or published. And again, go to the filters and start applying these filters. So what I want to know is which are the funding agencies that have funded Thailand researchers. Then you can use the researcher location filter and apply Thailand and update. Then these will be all the funders or funding agencies that have provided some form of funding to Thailand researchers, Thai researchers. So you can see now we have funding agencies within Thailand as well. So if you want to see who else outside of Thailand is providing funding, you would use the funding agency filter, funding agency location filter. So if you click on this, you can apply Thailand. Okay, so this drop down doesn't really work. So let me go to Thailand and we choose to exclude. So excluding Thailand funding agencies, and then you update. So now you have the funders outside of Thailand that are funding research from Thailand. And you can see the corresponding grant amounts where available. Okay, so you can see UKRI also does provide some form of funding. And if you want to know which areas or which institutions that have provided, that have received this funding, you can take a look at the Web of Science documents right here. Okay, and you can refocus to view organizations or researchers. Okay. So this is the use case on the funding agency. I hope this particular use case is useful because I thought with the currency crunch and the limited fundings available, this could give you an idea of external opportunities as well. Okay. Okay. Let me take a look at the time and the chat. Okay, no questions. Then the fourth use case will be as shown on the screen. What is the impact of the open access papers published by Mahidon University? Okay. Like I mentioned at the start of the presentation, open access papers require some form of investment from the university or the researcher in payments of the article processing charges. Sometimes that investment can be quite high, and it's always good to do a check on whether those publications have given you enough impact. Okay, so what you can do is go to, go back to InCites and let's go to organizations. So let me clear this list, and let's include Mahidon University. Okay, so now you see Mahidon University's data as this particular line. So if you want to find out about the performance of your open access papers, the filter that you would use on the left is your open access filter. And you can limit to each of these different levels. So gold open access tends to be those that are published in the DOAJ open access journals. Okay, so you can actually filter this down to gold and update. So gold is usually the one that you would have to invest a lot of money in to publish your paper. So you can filter this to gold. And for Mahidon University, you have published 5,282 papers in gold open access. In terms of CNCI overall, you would have 0.88. Okay. You could include additional filters here, like the research areas. So if you want to limit this to a specific research area, just apply the research area filter. Okay. And you would be able to immediately see the corresponding performance of that set of papers. Right. So this is the open access use case that I wanted to share with all of you. Okay. Then to the last few parts, which is on the custom data analysis. Okay. If you have access to Web of Science, you will be able to export the results set into InCites. Okay, so I can do a quick example for you. So let me go to Web of Science. Okay, so on Web of Science, if you were doing a search on Bentley and search, okay, then this custom data that you have can be exported into InCites. Okay, so once you have clicked on InCites export, then it will be port over into the InCites database, and immediately you can choose under here data set. There's a drop down arrow, then you can choose that particular custom data that you have just imported. Okay, so if I clear this filter, okay, so then this would be my custom data set that I have imported from InCites, from our Web of Science. And I can do my corresponding analysis using the InCites indicators. If you want to ingest your own custom data set, okay, you can do so from here under Organize. So if you click on Organize, you go to the folders. You can create new data set. Okay. So you have to put this into a CSV format, and there will be instructions on how you should format your file. But just remember, only those documents that are Web of Science publications will be imported into InCites. Okay, so you might have a list of, say, 10,000 DOIs or articles. Only those that are on Web of Science will be imported into InCites. Okay. So since we are here under Organize, so that's my use case and explanation for the custom data set. In terms of managing your access to InCites, you might have saved a few custom reports, like this one that I have. So I have a lot here, and also groups. In the event that you want to remove some of these groups, okay, Why is it not? Okay. So you can edit the group items right here or delete. Okay, so any of this can be deleted. You can also do a mass deletion. So if I want to just remove all these different groups, I can select them. Sorry, I think my internet seems a bit slow. That's why it's a bit laggy. And then you delete. Okay, so this would help you to do some housekeeping with the reports or data sets that you have. If you already save some reports, this is how it will look like, and this is where you retrieve them from. So under Organize again, you go to the report. So this Mahidon training that I have, it would have all these different reports. Okay, so to save any of these tiles into a report, you do it from the analysis visualization. Okay, so I can share an example with you. Okay, so let me go to anyone here. So let's say this was the visualization that you have. Okay, let me do trend graph. Okay, so let's say you want to save this chart into that report. You can click Add to Report. Just remember, you can only do the addition to the report from the visual. Okay, so from here, you just put in OA Mahidon. And you find the report that you want to save it under and save. Okay, so the next time you go to this report, which is this custom report, you go to Organize Folders and find this report. And when you're looking at it, which is this right here, you can either share this, or if you want to retrieve the latest data, then you just click on View Data. And it will bring you to the analysis again. Okay. All right, so this is the walkthrough that I have for you today. Okay, the slides will be shared. Okay, but before we end today's session, I just wanted to share a little something with all of you about funding opportunities and collaborators. So most recently, ProQuest has been acquired by Clarivate, and we are now joined together as one company. And for ProQuest Ex Libris, there is a solution that allows organizations to identify potential funding opportunities for themselves and also collaborators. This is in the form of this product called Pivot RP. And Pivot RP is the most comprehensive resource for global funding information. So this platform currently is not subscribed by Mahidon University yet. Okay, but I wanted to just share this with you because we are collecting some feedback to find out whether this would be something useful for institutions like yourself. Okay, so do send us any feedback if you want to discuss further. But this resource will allow you to gain funding insights and efficiently match financial support to researchers and partners. This platform is currently utilized by over 700 top research institutes globally, and it is used by 40 out of top 75 of those that are ranked in the THE World University Rankings. Pivot RP helps you to accelerate the research process by integrating funding and collaborator discovery into one platform or one tool. Within the platform itself, you will be able to look at billions of dollars in funding and whether any of those fundings can be applied to Thailand researchers. It will also give you an opportunity to reach out to international collaborators based on your profile as a researcher. This is just a snapshot of the platform, so you can easily pinpoint the particular research area. So for example, this on the screen, it talks about area studies related to sustainable development. Then you will be able to drill down or even search for the text or keywords to identify the most related funding for that particular research area. Once you have done that search, you will be able to drill down and see the full list and also have an overview of the monetary amount that is available for that particular fund, and also the deadline for application for those grants. Everything is curated, and any update and information is done in real time. So the information you see will be always the latest information with regards to the grants listed on this platform. If you drill into each of the funding opportunity, there will be details available like the total monetary amount, and most importantly, something to do with the applicant's location. So if there will be funding that is available for international researchers where the location is not, there's no limit to the location, then those funding will be applicable to Thailand or even Mahidon University. Even on this particular details page on the right-hand side, there will be a chance for you to identify potential collaborators based on this funding that you were looking at. Then you can click through into the profiles here to see who you can collaborate with. Once you have drilled into the profile of that researcher, you will also be able to see their publication details. And even for yourself, if you have you will also have your own profile on this platform together with all your publication details, and the system will match you to potential funding opportunities. And you will also be able to incorporate your internal funding, meaning if Mahidon University has your own funding opportunity available that you want to disseminate and share with researchers within Mahidon University, you will be able to put that into that system as well. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of this new resource or this new platform that you might want to consider. So if there's anyone who is interested to discuss further, feel free to reach out to myself or my colleague Prom Harit Tom, and we can make some further elaborations and demo for you on this particular platform. Okay. So that is the end of today's session. Okay, we have about 15 minutes to go. So if you have any questions, you are able to type those questions into the chat, and I can address them as much as I can. Okay. I'm not sure whether you're able to unmute yourself, but if you prefer to do that, I think you can try and unmute yourself to ask questions. Okay. While we're waiting for participants to type any questions, just a reminder, if you need further support, there is always a resource center on InCites, which is denoted by this question mark. So click on question mark, and there will be product updates, and also the help will be available here. Okay. And on a side note, for those of you who are interested in knowing the latest journal impact factor, journal impact factor, the latest data will be released on the 28th of June, so next week. So the journals will have an updated journal impact factor from 28th June onwards, US time. So for Asia, it should be on the 29th, the following day. The data will be updated also on InCites, so you will be able to see the latest journal impact factor on InCites from next week. All right, so that's it. So if there's no further questions, I'll hand this session back to Ms. Kanita, and thank you all for your time for today.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Julin. So if you have any questions, so you have the time, you can type the question in chat box. But if you don't have the question right now, you can write an email to Dr. Julin and his colleagues to ask about how to use InCites or any query when you use SciWow. So I think I would like to thank you, Dr. Julin and the colleagues from Clarivate for giving us the training, because InCites was very useful for both international relations work and also any research work. So today I would like to give you many thanks.
Welcome. Always look forward to working with the IR team and yourself.
Mm-hmm. สำหรับการอบรมครั้งนี้นะคะ ก็เดี๋ยวทางผู้จัดนะคะทางกองวิทยาสัมพันธ์ก็จะส่งตัวเรคคอร์ดนะคะพร้อมด้วยสไลด์ของดร.จูลินให้กับparticipant ทุกท่านนะคะแล้วก็ขอขอบพระคุณผู้เข้าร่วมการอบรมครั้งนี้ทุกท่านนะคะแล้วก็ทางกองวิทยาถ้าเกิดว่ามีอะไรผิดพลาดไปก็ขอประทานอภัยแล้วก็ขออภัยไว้ณที่นี้ด้วยขอบพระคุณทุกท่านมากๆนะคะสวัสดีค่ะดร.จุลิน bye bye
Bye. Thank you.